They were not just cities. They were worlds, built on ambition, power, and dreams. Greece, Rome, two civilizations that defined what it means to be human, yet both left behind mysteries buried in stone and silence. But what secrets still lie hidden beneath their ruins? And what truths do the bones of marble whisper if we dare to listen? Classical archaeology is more than the study of ruins. It is the unraveling of a human story written in temples, amphitheaters, and forgotten scrolls. Greece gave us democracy, philosophy, and art. Rome gave us engineering, law, and empire. But their greatness was matched by their fragility. For even giants can crumble. Every year, over 30 million people walk among the ruins of Greece and Rome. Yet for every column that stands, countless fragments remain buried, waiting to be discovered. In Pompeii, entire lives were frozen in volcanic ash. In Athens, fragments of painted pottery tell us what words could not. And in Rome, underground catacombs whisper of forgotten faiths and hidden communities. Classical archaeology is not just history. It is a living dialogue between the past and the present. But archaeology is more than stones and relics. It is about people. The mother who prayed to Athena for her child. The gladiator who stepped into the arena knowing it might be his last day. The philosopher who wrote words that would echo for centuries. Through them we see ourselves, our hopes, our fears, our search for meaning. Yet mysteries remain. Was the Trojan War a myth or a memory? What truths still lie beneath Rome's buried palaces? And how much of Greece's knowledge, its lost plays, its forgotten philosophies, was lost forever in the flames of time? Every excavation is a gamble with history, for with each discovery, we rewrite who we are. Greece and Rome may have fallen, but their shadows still shape our world. Their ruins are not monuments to death, but reminders of life, of what humans can build, and of how fragile it all is. Classical archaeology is not just about the past. It is about us. For in the ruins of yesterday, we glimpse the foundations of tomorrow. The secrets of Greece and Rome are not locked in the past. They live in us, waiting to be remembered. Welcome to the History Vault. Stay with us as we uncover hidden history. Beneath the skies of the Mediterranean, ruins rise from the earth like silent witnesses to forgotten centuries. Stones once carved by human hands still stand, weathered yet unbroken, whispering of a time when Greece and Rome shaped the destiny of the world. To walk among these ruins is to step into a story larger than any single life, a story that still reaches across millennia and finds its place in us today. Classical archaeology begins here, with fragments of marble, fallen columns, and scattered mosaics. But behind the broken beauty lies something more enduring, the tale of human ambition, faith, struggle, and legacy. Imagine standing at the foot of the Parthenon in Athens at sunrise. Golden light brushes across the marble, igniting the stone with a glow that feels alive. It is easy to forget that this masterpiece was not built as a ruin. It was once the beating heart of a city that gave the world philosophy, drama, and the earliest experiments in democracy. Just beyond the horizon, the great city of Rome once stood as the center of an empire stretching from the sands of North Africa to the misty hills of Britain. Its ruins, too, remain. Arches, forums, aqueducts, silent reminders of a people who built as though their world would last forever. And yet, the silence of these ruins speaks of impermanence, of fragility, of civilizations that soared but eventually fell. Archaeology asks us to listen to those silences. It is not only about stones in the ground, it is about lives once lived. Each cracked amphora, each weathered statue, each inscription carved into stone carries with it the echo of the human hand that made it. And every discovery forces us to ask how much of their world survives in ours. When we look at the broken theaters of Greece, can we still hear the voices of playwrights who once moved entire crowds to laughter or tears? When we gaze at the Colosseum in Rome, can we sense the roar of 50,000 people cheering or gasping as gladiators fought for survival? What makes these ruins so captivating is that they tell us two stories at once. On one hand, they show us the heights of human creativity. The ability to build cities of marble, to carve gods from stone, to design aqueducts that carried water across mountains. On the other hand, they remind us of human fragility. Earthquakes shattered temples, wars burned cities, and time itself reduced the mighty empires of Greece and Rome to fragments. And yet the ruins endure, calling out to every generation that follows. They remind us that civilizations rise and fall, but human desire to create, to dream, and to remember never fades. The allure of ruins has fascinated travelers and thinkers for centuries. Long before archaeology became a science, poets and philosophers stood among broken columns and wondered about the people who once walked there. In the 18th and 19th centuries, explorers carried sketches and stories of these ruins back to Europe, sparking a revival of classical art and architecture. Even today, millions of visitors flock to Athens and Rome each year, not simply to see old stones, but to feel connected to something larger than themselves. The ruins stir the imagination. They make us ask, what happened here? Who stood on these steps? Whose voices were carried through these walls? And archaeology provides answers, piece by piece. Every excavation uncovers a new clue. A shard of pottery tells us what people ate. A fresco on a crumbling wall shows us how they imagined beauty. A gravestone carved with names ensures that someone, long forgotten, is remembered again. These details pull us closer to lives once thought lost forever. They remind us that history is not abstract. It is not only about kings, generals, and empires. It is about families, workers, and dreamers, ordinary people who built extraordinary civilizations. What makes the story of Greece and Rome especially powerful is how deeply their ruins connect to our present. Walk through a modern city, and you will see echoes of classical architecture, columns, domes, arches. Our languages carry their words. Our laws still borrow their principles. Our stories still retell their myths. To study their ruins is not to gaze at a distant past. It is to recognize the foundations of the world we live in today. But the ruins are more than reminders of influence. They are also warnings. Greece and Rome believed their greatness would last forever. They built monuments meant to defy time, and yet their civilizations fell. Their ruins caution us against assuming that power, wealth, or brilliance can shield a society from decline. They urge us to think about what remains when all else is lost. What stories will our buildings, our art, and our words tell to those who come after us? As the sun sets behind the Colosseum or slips behind the hills of the Acropolis, the ruins take on a different voice. In their silence, there is both beauty and melancholy. They ask us not only to admire, but to reflect. To see them is to see ourselves, our ambition, our creativity, our vulnerability. Classical archaeology does not simply invite us to look backward. It invites us to look inward, to ask what it means to be human across the ages. This is the eternal allure of ruins. They are more than broken stones. They are the fragile yet enduring link between past and present, between lives lived long ago and the choices we make today. And as the story of Greece and Rome unfolds, one truth becomes clear. These civilizations may have fallen, but their echoes remain, shaping our world in ways we are still discovering. High above the city of Athens stands a hill crowned with marble. To see it is to glimpse both beauty and power, for here, nearly 25 centuries ago, the Parthenon rose in honor of Athena, the city's protector. Its columns still stand against wind and time, and they remind us of the daring spirit of ancient Greece, a people who dreamed not only of gods and myths, but of questions, ideas, and art that would shape the world forever. Greece was not a single kingdom bound by one ruler. Instead, it was a collection of city-states, each with its own way of life, its own ambitions, and often its own rivalries. Among them, Athens became a beacon. Here, the foundations of democracy were first laid, not in grand declarations, but in gatherings of citizens who debated, voted, and shared the weight of decisions. Though limited, women, slaves, and outsiders were excluded. This early form of collective rule sparked an idea that would ripple across centuries. To stand in the agora, the marketplace where Athenians gathered, is to stand at the birthplace of civic debate, a place where voices could shape the destiny of a people. But the Greeks were not only political thinkers, they were also seekers of truth in every form. Philosophers asked questions that others had not dared to ask. Socrates walked the streets of Athens, challenging the powerful and the ordinary alike to think about justice, virtue, and the meaning of life. His student, Plato, imagined a republic guided by wisdom rather than wealth. And Aristotle, in his vast teachings, explored the natural world, logic, and human behavior in ways that still influence us today. Their thoughts, written and passed down, became the backbone of philosophy, science, and ethics, reaching far beyond the boundaries of their time. While ideas shaped the mind, art and architecture shaped the eye. The Greeks believed beauty was not only for the gods, but also a reflection of human excellence. Their statues of athletes and gods captured the human form with precision and grace, striving to show not just the body, but the spirit within it. The marble figures of the discus thrower or the goddess Nike reveal both strength and serenity, balance and motion. In these works, the Greeks sought something timeless, a vision of perfection that would outlast their mortal lives. Theaters, too, became sacred spaces where stories came to life. Carved into the sides of hills, these open-air arenas could hold thousands, and in them, the voices of playwrights carried across the crowd. Tragedies written by Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides spoke of fate, pride, and the struggles of gods and men. Comedies by Aristophanes mocked leaders and exposed the absurdities of daily life. To sit in one of these theaters today, surrounded by stone seats worn smooth by centuries, is to feel the echo of laughter and sorrow that once filled the air. These plays were not just entertainment. They were mirrors held up to society, reflecting its fears, its flaws, and its dreams. Religion wove itself into every part of Greek life. Temples rose not only as places of worship, but as masterpieces of design. The Parthenon, with its perfect proportions, was more than a shrine. It was a symbol of human mastery over form and space. The myths told through sculpture and poetry spoke of gods who were powerful yet flawed, gods who loved and raged like humans themselves. These stories explained the unexplainable, lightning, the sea, death, and destiny, and they gave order to a world that often felt uncertain. Yet Greek civilization was not without conflict. The same city-states that produced such brilliance also fought fiercely among themselves. The Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta showed how pride and rivalry could tear apart even the most advanced societies. Athens, once the shining leader, suffered defeat, and with it came a reminder that human greatness is never secure. Still, even in loss, the ideas and creations of Greece continued to spread. Through trade, conquest, and storytelling, their influence moved far beyond their homeland. What makes Greece's legacy remarkable is not only what they achieved, but how their spirit endured. When Rome later rose to power, it borrowed heavily from Greek art, philosophy, and science. The statues, the plays, the writings of the philosophers, these became treasures carried into a new empire, ensuring that the Greek voice was never silenced. Even today, their influence lingers in our governments, in our theaters, in our art galleries, and in the very questions we still ask about life and meaning. To explore the ruins of Greece is to step into a world that believed in the power of thought, the beauty of form, and the courage of expression. Their achievements were not accidents of history. They were the result of a restless desire to understand, to create, and to leave something behind. And though their temples are weathered, their statues chipped, and their theaters silent, the ideas of Greece remain unbroken. They remind us that human creativity, once awakened, can never be buried. In the story of Greece, we see more than an ancient people. We see the beginnings of our own story, the questions we still ask, the art we still cherish, the systems we still debate. And as we journey deeper into the ruins and legacies of the classical world, the voice of Greece continues to call to us, asking us not to forget, but to remember, and to carry their vision into our own time. From the heart of Italy rose a city that would one day command the known world. Rome, a small settlement by the Tiber River, grew into a power whose name carried both fear and admiration across continents. To understand its legacy is to walk among the ruins of the Colosseum, the arches that once marked victories, and the roads that stretched farther than the eye could see. But Rome was more than monuments. It was an empire built on discipline, ambition, and a vision of order that reshaped history. Rome's strength was not born overnight. At first, it was just another city-state, struggling for survival among rivals. But it carried with it a unique ability, the power to adapt. From the Etruscans, Rome borrowed engineering skills. From the Greeks, it took philosophy, art, and religion. And from every land it conquered, it absorbed customs and knowledge. What Rome could not invent, it perfected. And this ability to adapt and unify under a single banner allowed it to grow into something the world had never seen before. The genius of Rome lay not only in its armies, though its legions were unmatched, but also in its infrastructure. Roman roads connected far-flung provinces, stretching more than 250,000 miles across the empire. Soldiers could march swiftly, merchants could trade easily, and ideas could travel with remarkable speed. These roads, paved with stone and built to last, were so well designed that parts of them still survive today. The phrase, "all roads lead to Rome," was not just a saying, it was a reality. Water, too, was mastered by Roman engineering. Aqueducts carried streams across valleys and into cities, supplying fountains, baths, and homes with fresh water. In Rome itself, 11 aqueducts delivered millions of gallons each day, transforming city life in ways that no other civilization of its time could match. Public baths became centers of social life where citizens met, debated, and relaxed. Clean water and sanitation gave Rome an advantage that helped its people thrive, while elsewhere disease often crippled entire communities. But Rome was more than bricks and mortar. It was also a political laboratory, constantly evolving. The Republic, founded after the fall of monarchy, introduced systems of checks and balances. Power was shared between consuls, the Senate, and the assemblies, though in practice it often favored the elite. This system inspired later generations, including the framers of modern democracies. Yet Rome also revealed the fragility of politics. Corruption, ambition, and power struggles led to civil wars, paving the way for the rise of emperors. Julius Caesar's assassination was not just the death of a leader. It marked the end of the Republic and the beginning of Imperial Rome. Under Augustus, the first emperor, Rome entered a golden age known as the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For over 2 centuries, relative stability allowed culture, art, and trade to flourish. Cities across the empire mirrored Rome itself, with theaters, temples, and forums. To travel from Spain to Syria was to walk through streets that bore the same architecture, the same symbols, and the same sense of belonging to something greater. Rome's identity spread across 3 continents, binding together peoples of many languages and faiths under a single empire. Yet this vastness carried both pride and burden. The Colosseum, completed in 80 AD, became the symbol of Roman might. Tens of thousands gathered to watch gladiators fight, wild beasts hunt, and grand spectacles unfold. These events were more than entertainment. They were a demonstration of imperial power, a way to keep the masses loyal by giving them awe and distraction. But behind the grandeur was a darker truth. Gladiators were often slaves or prisoners forced to fight for survival. The same empire that built aqueducts and roads also thrived on conquest and control, on the backs of those who had little choice in their fate. Rome's cultural reach was as influential as its military. Latin, the language of the empire, became the root of many modern tongues: Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian. Roman law, codified and structured, influenced legal systems for centuries. Even ideas of citizenship and rights trace their origins to Rome's legal thought. Its literature, from Virgil's Aeneid to Ovid's poetry, shaped Western storytelling. Roman architecture, with its arches, domes, and use of concrete, set a standard that still inspires modern builders. In every corner of life, Rome left its imprint. But like all empires, Rome faced limits. Its borders stretched too wide, its politics grew unstable, and its economy suffered under the weight of wars and corruption. Emperors rose and fell, some remembered for greatness, others for cruelty. The same empire that once seemed eternal began to crack. In the West, Rome eventually collapsed under invasions and internal decay. Yet even in its fall, it gave birth to something enduring. The Eastern Empire, known as Byzantium, carried Roman traditions for nearly 1,000 more years. And in the West, The memory of Rome became the dream of kings, emperors, and nations who sought to inherit its glory. To look at Rome today is to see the ruins of ambition, but also the footprints of survival. Its arches still stand, its roads still stretch, its language still speaks, and its laws still guide. Rome's story is not only about conquest and decline, it is about resilience, adaptation, and the desire to build something greater than oneself. Its legacy is not confined to history books, but is written into the foundations of the world we live in. When we speak of Rome, we do not just speak of a fallen empire. We speak of an idea, a belief that human beings could organize, build, and rule on a scale beyond imagination. And though the empire itself is gone, the shadow of Rome still shapes us, a reminder of both the heights we can reach and the limits we must respect. There are moments when history does not fade quietly into memory but is suddenly frozen, captured in time as if the past itself refused to vanish. Few places reveal this truth more powerfully than Pompeii and Herculaneum. In the year 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius erupted with unstoppable fury, burying entire cities beneath layers of ash and stone. For centuries, those places lay silent, untouched, until excavations uncovered streets, homes, and even food still on tables. Here, archaeology does not speak of emperors or conquests alone. It reveals ordinary lives, halted in an instant, and preserved for us to witness nearly 2,000 years later. Walking through Pompeii today, the stones of its streets are grooved with the marks of ancient carts. Frescoes still adorn the walls, their colors vivid even after centuries underground. Graffiti carved into plaster tells of neighbors, businesses, and even jokes. But most haunting of all are the plaster casts of people, men, women, and children, caught in their final moments. They remind us that history is not abstract. It is lived and often lost by human beings no different from us. Archaeology uncovers their world not as myth or imagination, but as reality, frozen for eternity. Yet Pompeii and Herculaneum are not the only places where lives reappear through the work of archaeology. Across Greece and Rome, discoveries give us a glimpse into the rhythm of daily life. In Athens, shards of painted pottery reveal scenes of markets, music, and myths retold in simple households. In Roman villas, mosaics made of thousands of tiny stones capture everything from heroic battles to playful animals, decorating floors that once echoed with laughter and conversation. These fragments of art and design carry the voices of people who are otherwise absent from history books. Craftsmen, families, children, and workers whose lives mattered as much as those of kings. Archaeological finds often begin with small details, but together they create entire worlds. A coin dug from the ground tells not only of trade, but of rulers who placed their image on currency to spread authority. An oil lamp decorated with mythological scenes shows how even common objects carried meaning and imagination. Inscriptions scratched into stone walls record names, prayers, and messages that survived long after their writers were gone. Each discovery is like a thread, and when woven together, they form the fabric of ancient society. One of the most extraordinary discoveries lies not in stone, but in words. In Herculaneum, a villa buried by the same eruption of Vesuvius revealed a library of papyrus scrolls. Though charred and brittle, modern technology has begun to read them, using scans and imaging to uncover lost works of philosophy and literature. These fragile scrolls are among the few ancient libraries ever found, and they remind us how much knowledge was destroyed by time, fire, and war. Each letter that can be recovered is a voice returning from silence. But archaeology is not only about artifacts, it is also about people's beliefs and identities. In the catacombs of Rome, underground burial sites reveal the rise of Christianity, with simple paintings of fish, doves, and crosses marking a community that once worshipped in secrecy. In sanctuaries across Greece, offerings left at temples, figurines, weapons, and personal gifts tell us of prayers spoken and hopes placed in the hands of gods. These objects show us the intimate connection between faith and daily life, where the sacred and the ordinary intertwined. Even the forgotten corners of ancient cities tell stories. In Pompeii, archaeologists found small workshops where slaves and artisans labored, bakeries with mills that ground grain into flour, and taverns where wine was served. These discoveries reveal an entire social order, from the wealthy elite who commissioned grand villas to the workers whose toil supported the city. It is a reminder that every civilization, no matter how glorious, rests on the lives of countless ordinary people whose names rarely survive. What makes these discoveries so compelling is how they transform our perception of history. Without them, Greece and Rome might seem like distant legends, reduced to myths of gods, philosophers, and generals. But archaeology fills those worlds with texture and life. It shows us not just what people built, but how they lived, what they ate, how they celebrated, what they feared, and how they dreamed. It narrows the gap between past and present, allowing us to recognize ourselves in those who lived thousands of years ago. And yet, for every treasure uncovered, many more remain hidden beneath earth and sea. Entire cities lie submerged along ancient coastlines, their harbors and warehouses waiting to be explored. Buried beneath modern streets are layers of forgotten neighborhoods, each holding secrets of generations long gone. Archaeology is an ongoing conversation with time, where every discovery raises new questions as much as it answers old ones. To look upon these finds is to realize how fragile memory can be. Without ash to preserve Pompeii, without archaeologists to rescue mosaics or inscriptions, so much would have been erased. And still, countless voices are lost forever. But what survives, even in fragments, is enough to remind us of the humanity within those civilizations, their laughter, their struggles, their ambitions. These discoveries are not only pieces of the past. They are bridges connecting us to lives that once pulsed with the same hope and uncertainty as our own. In the ruins of Pompeii, in the painted pottery of Athens, in the hidden catacombs beneath Rome, history speaks directly to us. It tells us that civilizations are not only measured by empires and monuments, but also by the daily lives of people who loved, worked, and dreamed. And as long as we continue to uncover their world, their stories will never truly be lost. The rise of classical art and architecture was not a sudden burst of creativity, but a long process shaped by centuries of experimentation, cultural exchange, and evolving human needs. In Greece, art was not merely decorative. It was a reflection of thought, belief, and the human condition. At first, Greek sculpture was rigid and lifeless, resembling the blocky forms of Egypt. But by the 5th century BCE, something extraordinary had changed. Sculptors like Phidias and Polykleitos began to shape marble and bronze with such precision and grace that their works seemed alive. Muscles tensed, robes flowed, and faces showed calm yet powerful expressions. For the first time, human beings were represented not just as they appeared, but as ideals, perfected forms of strength, beauty, and balance. These statues were more than art. They were symbols of harmony, capturing the very essence of Greek philosophy, which believed in order, proportion, and symmetry. This philosophy extended beyond sculpture into the grand structures that still define Greece today. The Parthenon in Athens remains a marvel of architectural genius. Built to honor Athena, it was not just a temple, but a statement of identity, a declaration of the city's power and devotion. Every column, every angle was carefully measured to create the illusion of perfection. Though weathered by centuries of war and time, it continues to stand as a reminder of how deeply the Greeks valued beauty and precision. Even now, architects study its proportions, trying to uncover the secrets that allowed it to remain one of the most remarkable buildings in history. Rome, on the other hand, absorbed Greek ideas and reshaped them for an empire that demanded grandeur and practicality. Where the Greeks emphasized proportion and balance, the Romans sought scale and innovation. Their cities grew larger, their monuments taller, and their structures more ambitious. The invention of concrete allowed Roman architects to move beyond the limits of stone. With it, they built aqueducts that stretched for miles, carrying fresh water into bustling cities. They raised amphitheaters that could hold tens of thousands, their walls echoing with cheers of gladiatorial games. One of the greatest symbols of Roman architecture is the Colosseum. Standing in the heart of Rome, it is both magnificent and haunting. Once the site of blood and spectacle, it embodied the empire's strength and its darker side. Arches and vaults gave the structure durability and elegance, while its sheer size declared Rome's dominance to all who entered. Yet even here, the artistry was not lost. The columns and decorations carried echoes of Greek style, showing how the two cultures intertwined. But perhaps the most revolutionary Roman achievement was the dome. The Parthenon remains the best-preserved example, its soaring dome an engineering triumph of the ancient world. Even today, its design inspires awe, with a central oculus opening the temple to the heavens. This was not just architecture. It was a vision of the universe, a structure that connected the human world to the divine. Art and architecture in Greece and Rome were never isolated. They were woven into daily life. Statues stood in marketplaces, temples crowned city hills, and mosaics decorated floors in private homes. Each piece carried meaning, whether honoring a god, celebrating victory, or displaying wealth. These creations reflected not only the technical skill of their makers, but also the ambitions and values of their societies. Through them, we see what these civilizations held sacred: beauty, power, and permanence. Yet their art was not only for the elite. In Greece, theaters carved into hillsides allowed thousands to watch tragedies and comedies, stories that questioned human nature and the will of the gods. In Rome, public baths became cultural centers, decorated with elaborate frescoes and statues. Art was not confined to temples and palaces. It was part of public life, woven into the fabric of society. What is remarkable is how much of this art and architecture has survived. Earthquakes, invasions, and centuries of neglect have left scars, but fragments endure. Each ruin, each broken statue still tells a story. They remind us that these were real societies, filled with people who dreamed, created, and built for the ages. When we stand among the ruins of the Forum or gaze at the silent marble faces of Greek statues, we are not just looking at art. We are looking at a message sent across time, and that message is powerful. It tells us that beauty and creativity were central to life. It shows us how humans, thousands of years ago, reached for something greater, something eternal. The legacy of Greek and Roman art and architecture is not locked in the past. It continues to shape our cities, our monuments, and our imagination today. Whether in the neoclassical facades of government buildings or in the arches of modern stadiums, the influence of these civilizations endures. Their genius was not only in what they built, but in the way they envisioned a world where art and architecture could elevate the human spirit. And that vision, carved in marble and set in stone, remains with us, urging us to remember that beauty and greatness are not fleeting. They can last forever. The fall of Greece and Rome is one of history's most haunting chapters because it reminds us that even the greatest civilizations are not immune to decline. For centuries, both cultures thrived, producing unmatched works of philosophy, politics, art, and architecture. Yet slowly, the forces of time and human ambition unraveled their power, leaving behind ruins that stand as silent witnesses of glory and collapse. In Greece, the seeds of decline were sown after the Peloponnesian War, when Athens and Sparta exhausted themselves in decades of brutal conflict. Cities that once stood united under common ideals of democracy and shared culture became fractured by rivalry and mistrust. Political instability opened the door for outside powers. By the 4th century BCE, the rise of Macedon under Philip II and his son Alexander the Great reshaped the Greek world. Alexander carried Greek culture far across Asia, but in doing so, he spread it thin. After his death, his empire splintered into rival kingdoms, each fighting for control. Greece itself, though rich in art and ideas, no longer held the strength to dominate politically. Eventually, it fell into the orbit of Rome, a rising power to the west that admired Greek culture even as it absorbed and controlled it. Rome's rise seemed unstoppable. Its legions conquered vast territories, stretching from Britain to Egypt, uniting millions of people under one empire. Roads, aqueducts, and laws brought order to lands that had once been divided. But this immense success carried a hidden cost. Maintaining such an empire required enormous resources and constant military campaigns. Over time, corruption, greed, and internal rivalries weakened the unity that had once made Rome so powerful. By the 3rd century CE, cracks in the empire were clear. Political power shifted rapidly, with emperors rising and falling in violent struggles. The economy faltered under heavy taxation and reliance on slave labor. Inflation rose, and many ordinary citizens found life harder than before. Meanwhile, enemies pressed on Rome's borders. Germanic tribes to the north and Persian forces to the east tested Rome's defenses. The empire, once a symbol of strength, found itself stretched thin, its armies unable to protect every frontier. One of the turning points came in the 4th century, when Emperor Constantine moved the capital from Rome to Byzantium, later renamed Constantinople. While the eastern part of the empire grew strong, the western half began to crumble. Rome, the eternal city, was no longer the heart of power. In 410 CE, the Visigoths shocked the world by sacking the city, the first time Rome had fallen to foreign invaders in 800 years. Just decades later, in 476 CE, the Western Roman Empire officially collapsed when the last emperor was deposed. The fall of Rome did not mean the end of its influence. Instead, its legacy scattered across Europe and beyond. Roman law shaped future legal systems. Roman roads continued to guide travel and trade. Roman ideas of government, literature, and architecture inspired generations to come. Meanwhile, in the East, the Byzantine Empire carried forward much of Rome's culture for another 1,000 years, preserving knowledge that would later fuel the Renaissance. For Greece, the story is similar. Though conquered by Rome, its intellectual and artistic influence endured. Greek philosophy shaped Roman thinkers and later Christian theology. Greek architecture and sculpture inspired the Renaissance and continue to inspire modern architects. Even in decline, Greece left a mark so deep that it became the foundation of Western civilization. What makes the fall of these civilizations so captivating is not only the drama of conquest and collapse, but also the enduring survival of their ideas. The ruins of the Parthenon, the broken columns of the Roman Forum, and the weathered statues scattered across museums are more than relics. They are reminders of human ambition, creativity, and fragility. They teach us that power may fade, but culture can endure. Today, archaeologists continue to uncover traces of these worlds. Excavations reveal daily life, from the tools of Roman households to inscriptions etched into Greek stones. Each discovery adds detail to the larger story, helping us understand not just why these civilizations fell, but how they lived. And perhaps most importantly, these discoveries remind us that history is not lost. It waits beneath the soil, ready to speak again. The fall of Greece and Rome carries lessons for us all. It warns of the dangers of division, overreach, and neglect. It also inspires us with the knowledge that even in collapse, greatness can echo across time. These civilizations may have crumbled, but their voices still reach us, shaping how we think, build, and govern today. The story of their fall is not an ending, but a transformation, one that ensured their spirit would never truly disappear. The story of Greece and Rome is not just a memory written in books or carved into broken stone. It is a living presence that still shapes the world we walk through today. Their empires may have collapsed, their armies faded, and their palaces turned to dust, yet their spirit did not vanish. It survived in the philosophies that guide our laws, in the architecture that crowns our cities, in the art that still inspires awe centuries later. When we stand among their ruins, we are reminded of both the greatness and the fragility of human ambition. We see how power can fade, but we also see how ideas, once born, can outlast kingdoms. Greece taught us the meaning of beauty, balance, and inquiry. Rome showed us the strength of order, innovation, and endurance. Together, they created the foundations of Western civilization. Their fall was not their end. It was a transformation, a passing of a torch that continues to burn. And as we look back at what they built, we are faced with a question that echoes across time. When our own age is reduced to ruins, what story will we leave behind? Thank you for watching History Vault.